some bona fides, if you will. I've played some Baldur's Gate, more than a little. David's going to get a kick out of this, though. These are the books for Baldur's Gate? Yeah, I had them signed by the doctors.
That's awesome.
David's always giving me grief for name dropping. I can do that on this one, too.
Now,
Yeah,
Ron,
so-
you show those things, but I have to
Yes.
ask, how many hours have you actually played of those?
Of those? Oh my god, I can't even estimate how many hours. Hundreds of hours.
Okay.
I thought about bringing down my other D&D box sets, but I thought that might be excessive. But I've got like the silver box and the gold set and all that kind of stuff. So
I'm just trying to help your Baldur's Gate street cred, all right? So you just can't
got
show the
plenty of
stuff
that.
off and be like, hey, I got the stuff. I've been playing Baldur's. Nah, you have the
some
credibility
dice.
to talk about Baldur's Gate 3. This is taking the internet by storm.
yeah.
So, yeah, how much are you liking this?
So yeah, Internet by Storm is no joke. I think it's now the 10th, at least the time of recording, 10th largest game on Steam ever. So, and still rising. I'm loving it. So one of the things that I absolutely love about it is that there is so much, it's so accurate to the board game without, or the pen and paper game without becoming cumbersome. They've somehow managed to make the dice rolls feel organic, and you still feel that feeling of, by the skin of my teeth, did I get that roll? Or, you roll the one and you're like, oh. So you get all the feeling of playing the board game, and somehow, I keep saying board game, the tabletop game, and without all the, having to invite a bunch of people over and having them eat all your Cheetos and stuff. So I'm absolutely loving it. I played a lot of it in early access and then just had to put it away because I'm like, I'm just going to ruin it for myself for the final game. So I want to set this aside and come back. And now that I'm coming back, I'm seeing so many little changes that Larian Studios put into just even the first act that just makes a world of difference. I mean, looking back 3 years, can't believe it's been 3 years in early access. But looking back 3 years, there's just so many improvements based off of fan feedback. I mean, this is one of those once in a decade kind of games. Any of you guys play it?
No.
I
Silence.
haven't,
Killing me.
Well, sell us on it.
All
Tell me why we should play this. Why should we all play this? I personally have not done any D&D ever, so why should I play it? I am interested in it, by the way.
It is highly accessible, even if you've not played Dungeons and Dragons. It takes the rules and it makes them so transparent and easy that you don't have to know a ton of stuff. You don't have to have a giant rule book set to play it. All that's kind of baked in. So if you look at a weapon, it says that it's +1, and if you hover over things, it'll tell you what that means. Or if it says it does this particular knock-on effect, like fire damage, it'll say, 1d4 plus this or whatever. You can hover over it and it'll get more explanation if you want it. Or you can just ignore all of that stuff and just say it hits harder and I see the damage numbers pop up. So it's really a matter of whatever you bring to it is enough. And that's what I'm talking about with the iteration over the last 3 years, is they took something that was kind of cumbersome and they've made it really simple, really easy and accessible. And I think that's why it's doing so well, even with people who've not played Dungeons & Dragons. And you don't have to play any of these previously either. You can jump right in. If you happen to have played those, there's some callbacks, but completely unnecessary. If you've never played those, you'll be perfectly fine.
If there is something that I wanted to try to do, the game doesn't let me do it, so it can stick to the rules, so I don't have to, look into what I can and can't do.
You'd be hard pressed to find that. So, like, if there's a
Okay.
barrel in the environment, you can grab the barrel and you can drag it into the environment. If it's water, you can break it and have it splash water everywhere, and then you can use a lightning staff to smack the water and throw throw electricity on everybody. Same thing with if there's oil, you can use that and use fire. I figured out that if you take crates and stack them up, you can get a height advantage to shoot with down with arrows. There's all sorts of things that you can do that are just using the engine. It kind of reminds me of Tears of the Kingdom in that same way. It's taking the engine and just saying, player, go nuts. Here's the sandbox that we created for you. Here are the tools that we gave you. Beyond that, it's your show. Have fun.
Did you want to ask something, Noah? Look like it.
Oh no, I've seen a lot of, all the people going crazy over Baldur's Gate, and I've just been afraid to dive in because I think I'll get lost into it, especially since so far for me, my game of the year is Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm afraid if I play Baldur's Gate, it's gonna get, you know.
Well, I mean, this is Elden Ring level of attention we are seeing.
Yeah, it is
with
insane.
Baldur.
Oh yeah, and beyond. Yeah.
Like for reference, right now, the Steam database, there are 500,000 people playing the game right now.
Right now. Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous.
It'll eat your life too. If you played through it twice, 3 times, you still wouldn't see everything. I'll give you a good example without going too far into spoiler territory. There's one really, really extraordinarily tough fight. If you go through one area, you can disarm a bunch of traps and you can kind of sneak behind the enemy. And then you have the advantage of being behind them and you'll get 1 free attack. Or if you go a different way, you can directly confront the enemy and then you can use your special powers, which I don't want to get into because that's going to spoil things, to influence the leader to attack his own people. And when that obviously allows you to clear that fight much easier than if you came the other way. So just playing it 2 different ways like that. Or you can do like I was talking about and literally drag barrels into the area and create a little explosive trap, draw them down, hit the barrels and blow them up, and it'll literally throw them with the explosion of the barrels all over the place. Or you can engage them directly, maneuver yourself around where there's a nearby cliff and literally just kick them off the cliff if you've got the athletics to do it. There's no right way to play this, and that's the part that I love the most about this game. And yeah, it's going to suck you in.
So, for those who have a bunch of time with D&D and maybe they haven't played it, maybe they're interested in it, why play this other than just going and doing your own D&D or continuing to do your own D&D in real life?
So obviously you can do both, right? But I think the advantage this has is...
sound time consuming.
It is time consuming, but it is drop in. You can play together, so you can play locally, which is kind of crazy in this day and age. You don't see a lot of local co-op games like that. You can sit down and play this game on a couch together, one person with a controller, the other person with a controller, or both with keyboards, or whatever works for you, and enjoy it together that way. Or you can play online together, up to 4 players, or drop in, drop out. So when you drop in, you're going to take control of existing characters, or you can make a brand new character. It's really entirely up to you how you want to play it. But like I was saying, I think you can do both because this game really takes the mundane stuff out of the game and makes it much easier. D&D can be a lot of work to set up, and it's a lot of work to keep track of all the different things that are going on in the background. And this hides the stuff that's mundane and exposes the stuff that's fun. When you do something in Dungeons & Dragons, like for instance, if I want to, another scenario that's in the game, I go into a house and it's on fire and there's a character who's yelling that they need my help. I go up to a door, my character is going to roll the dice and determine whether they pass a perception check to know that the door is hot. If they know that the door is hot, they're going to say, hey, I'm going to want to stand away from that door when I attack it because it's going to explode. If you fail the perception check, your character's not going to say a thing. You're going to pop that door and it's going to explode and throw you off of the second story of this building. And that's going to hurt a lot. So if you pass the perception check, which is done in the background, your character says something, you pop the door. Now you have a little bit of extra time to get in and get the character that's stuck in there. You'll do a strength check. So it's going to roll against your strength. And you see the dice roll on the screen for that one. And if you succeed, you'll successfully get the beam off of them and they can get them out of the room. If you fail, well, now the whole place is going to get consumed with fire and your character may die. So it's really all that dice roll stuff that, it keeps the stuff that's boring out of the way while exposing the stuff that's fun.
If your character dies, do you just go back to your last save? Or
you have 4 characters, so you'd have to send somebody in to rescue them, which, again, I'd drag a barrel, throw it in there, have the barrel explode and splash the area with water, then I'd run in and get them, which you could do that same approach. If you failed to check on the door, and the room started to get consumed with fire, you could throw a barrel in there and throw water all over the place, run in, grab that character, and get out.
The barrel, the new bridge.
Right? Tears of the Kingdom bridge.
So David Flynn did something completely ridiculous. He drug barrels all the way across the map and up into the rafters for a part of a really tough fight. And to start the fight off, just kicked a bunch of explosive barrels down on top of the enemies. Because you can. And that's the cool part, right? Because you can. It makes no sense to do it that way, but because you can.
Yeah, this is one of those I just need to play because I don't understand the dynamic or the interactions between when the dice roll goes and what it allows you to do, because I feel like D&D is largely based on whatever the dice roll allows you to do, that's what you can do, but it sounds like there's some just general freedom of, you know what, I'm just going to stack a whole bunch of wooden explosive boxes on top of each other and jump to the top of the castle roof and see what happens from there. Fire an arrow at it and just let it do stuff.
Throw on top of that there's more than a dozen character classes, so how you approach a thing might be completely different than the way I approach it. My character's a monk, so I take half damage from jumping off of things. Maybe your character isn't and you die jumping off of things. So, the way I approach things might be completely different than the way you do. And that's really the cool part, is getting together and talking about, hey, did you do that fight? How did you do that? And getting to talk about the way that you approached it. That just makes it super cool for me.
So does everybody generally do the same main story quests, but I don't know, because I've heard there's 1,700 endings.
1,700. Yeah, it's 1,700 permutations. So there's the main story, but I mean, you can miss major characters. You can miss entire story threads. If you don't go down in one well, there's a boss down there that you're going to miss completely, and all the equipment that you're going to get from going down there and actually completing that. So if you don't look around, you're going to miss a lot, and that's just the way it is.
So what's the actual likelihood anybody's going to do the same thing?
Pretty low. I think there's going to be some things that people do the same way because it's kind of the obvious way. But I think the more interesting thing is when people find some strange way to do it. That's like, hey, I broke the game. I found this cool way to completely go around this boss. A good example was there's one particular boss that I was really having a hard time. But my character's a monk, so I have really good athletics. I walked straight up to him and kicked him into the lava. Encounter over. That was it. because I can. So, that guy had killed me like 4 or 5 times, reload, and finally I'm like, let me see if this works. And that was it. Cool. All right. I don't get the equipment because it's over there in the lava, but boss encounter over. It's a very satisfying feeling. And then you sit there and you wonder, and you're like, if I just prepared differently, could I have done that? Could I have finished that boss a different way? Maybe gotten the equipment. I don't know. He's in the lava. I'm going to move on now. Maybe on my next run. I guess there's one other aspect that you probably should know about. So you can roll your own character. You've got all these different character classes, and you've got all these different races and sub-races and backgrounds and everything else that you can do. But there's also these origin characters. So the origin characters are kind of the written story characters. And when you are playing the game normally with a character you create, you are experiencing the story from that made character's perspective. But you can also play it from an origin character's perspective. So, for instance, and I'm going to spoil like 5 minutes of the game here, Asterion, which you can tell right from the artwork, is a vampire. Everybody else needs glasses, I guess, because they don't know he's a vampire. So if you play as Asterion, you've got this internal struggle of, hey, I woke up in the sunlight, I should be dead, and I'm not. Why am I not dead? You meet up with your party members. Do I bite people for health? And you get advantages from it as well. Do I do that? Because if I do that in front of them, then I'm going to have to then have a conversation with them about the fact that I'm a vampire and I don't want to eat them while they sleep. So there's like a whole role-playing element for every single character. Yeah, and there's like 6 or 7 different characters that you can play as, these origin characters that are completely written, so fully voiced, whole 9 yards. So there's a ton of content.
Is the game fully voiced?
Oh yeah, over 1 million lines of dialogue.
Oh God.
Yeah. Easily over 100 hours worth of content, and all of it's fully voiced. Every NPC, everybody.
It's great to see, like, this is an out of left. I know that lots of people know about Larian and how good, but even they were like, we're expecting 100,000 people best case. Like,
yeah.
They're IT people, and they're like, they're mad at us now. Because like it's so great. Like, in a year with Zelda and Diablo and Survivor and Starfield and Spider-Man that still have yet to come out, like, for something to literally come out of left field like this and be like, no, I'm probably the game of the year. Like, it's just cool to see when it's something that we've not really seen a lot about, or was really over the top in everybody's faces. Just really cool to see all that, and of course Larian. Like, it's really cool to see them get to get the spotlight, and they're going to get the opportunity to pretty much name their price with whatever their next game is too. So that's even cooler.
Yeah, we're definitely eating well this year. If you haven't seen your RPG friends in a while, it's okay. They've been stuck behind a screen, and they will be for some time.
Jeez, yeah. All right. Well, we've got a few games that have been in the Game of the Year consideration. I imagine this is there, although it sounds like the review won't be finished until December 31st, 2023. So what is your pitch for this game to be Game of the Year? Because I imagine this is going to be your choice.
You know, it's going to be hard to argue against it. Just the amount of freedom in the game is unparalleled. I mean, you get games, you know, from companies like Bethesda, like Starfield, I imagine is going to have a wealth of different ways to play, but there's no game that is as flexible with its approach than this one. I feel like I can go into every encounter and play it differently every time. I could play this game 3, 4, 5 times and still not see everything. And it's not just the content, it's the ways that you can engage with the content. And that feels like D&D to me. That feels like my childhood come to life. And just the sheer volume of it. It's just an impossible game to compare to anything else. I don't feel like it's even fair for Starfield to come out so close to it. I mean, how are they going to even stand a chance? And Starfield's probably going to be amazing.
Yep.
But it's just in a whole class unto itself.
The Gaming Trend Podcast. Noah
suggested a topic we should probably debate on this podcast because we have debated this before, and I've actually never debated it with anybody else. I'm not sure what my stance is on this particular topic here, but I suppose we should talk about what is Toad's head. Is this hair or is this a cap? Noah, you're the one who brought this up. I imagine you have a stance on this. Go ahead and give us your take on this.
I think mostly it's a hat because underneath, I don't know how close up you can see, but there's almost like a shadowing underneath the white. That leads me, I don't know if it's just the way the picture was drawn or not, but that makes me think that it is a hat. I don't know why, but I think it's a hat.
That's a real tight seal, man. That's a medical device.
It's not a hat. It's not hair. It's a medical device.
That's a big old boggin.
That's Ron's state. Okay, I'm just going to jump in here because I feel like I'm not sure you know how lighting works, because if the light is in a certain direction, if it's a fro or a hat, I think it's going to cast a shadow. I mean, it is. He doesn't have a forehead. That's kind of the thing. So his hair is covering, or a hat, I don't know, is covering whatever forehead he has. So that shadow, I mean, it's definitely going to be cast there. We got to zoom in on this. This is. Oof.
That was creepy.
I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to say his hair as a brother.
That face was Anthony after every point I made on the Starfield marketing.
He's just trying not to lose it.
Now we broke Anthony.
I'm going to say this is hair. As a person who can grow a fro, I'm just going to go with the hair. I feel like Toad, he's one of us. He's rocking a fro. He keeps it clean. He's got the colors on it. Look at how good that is. It's good.
They did have Keegan-Michael Key voice him in the movie, so
yeah.
As somebody who grew up in South Central LA, I'm going to say the only thing we can't see is the pick in the back. Is that what it is? He's got the pick in the back to keep it natural.
Hey, maybe he doesn't need the pick in the picture. Maybe he just keeps that all private in the bathroom. Keeps the mystery going about
he's got us all guessing.
So perfect. David, come on.
So I've got to go with the logical side, which has me going with Noah because of the fact that I think it's a hat because what do you call the top of a mushroom? A cap.
Ooh.
It's a cap. It's a hat. That's what it is.
My homie watched a Bill Nye episode before hopping on the podcast and found out this stuff.
What would be more weird, though, is if he takes it off and those two dots that we think are his eyes are his nostrils. That would be really creepy.
Yep.
So we have seen canonically, is that how you say that?
Yep.
Mario's cap comes off. Now we're at the point where Nintendo is allowing Mario to throw his hat off.
And possess other people with it.
That's where we're at here. So it is to my understanding that if that were a cap, at some point it has to come off because Nintendo has decided hats come off. And so
medical device that is way on there.
Hair. That is hair.
Here's the one thing that's missing though.
Crafted and cut and manicured.
The man has no ears. Those are tucked up underneath. David's onto something. Those are nostrils. All of that's up here. Ears, face,
where are the
all
nostrils,
of it.
Ron? Where?
Oh, those aren't eyes. Those aren't
eyes.
You mean those aren't eyes? Okay, now we're in a whole different level. You're telling me these aren't eyes?
Nope, those are nostrils.
The eyes of a killer.
Nostrils.
The eyes are up inside the medical device. Yep. It's more disturbing the more you zoom in on it. I'm just saying.
So this is the eye. Is this?
Yeah. There's an eye back behind there.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard. So what is the mouth then?
Oh, the mouth is just the mouth. There's there's razor sharp teeth under there, but it's a mouth.
Give me a second. I got something. Where is it?
David's got something to share.
You got something for this?
Yeah.
It is confirmed Mario has nipples. Toad does not. So perhaps
of all the things I expected to hear.
That's what you get on the Gaming Trend podcast.
They had to get that confirmed.
No, it is confirmed Mario has nipples. We've seen this from Mario Odyssey. So Toad has not inherited that chest action yet. So
he's got no
perhaps
shirt,
there is something to the medical device. I will give you. Give you that. I just want to know what the medical device does, because if it's a medical device and his eyes happen to be inside the medical device, what is it doing?
There we go. I don't know if you can. Darn it! Give me a second. I got to fix this.
Maybe I've just played too much XCOM. I don't know. I played too much XCOM. There's definitely something horrible going on underneath that helmet. Just saying.
Okay, so the XCOM influence has got you thinking too much sci-fi. I just think this is hair. I just don't.
Going along the
if you can possibly show the Discord,
Toad could throw it like Mario throws his hat. I mean, each color could be an elemental affinity.
There it is.
This is what we're suggesting.
That's what's actually happening.
That is some nightmare fuel.
The fact that you had this in your mind.
I went and found it. I've seen that before.
He said, "There'll be a time when I have to bring this out."
The idea that this is an MMO, kind of, one of those Stardew Valley type of games in an MMO form, I was attracted to. I liked the sound of it. What I have found very quickly, though, is that there's not a bunch of MMO stuff to engage with, mostly in the sense of I have not found a lot of people I just haven't seen a lot of people, period. This is, I don't know how many people are in this beta. It's a closed beta right now, I believe.
Until today. Until the time of this recording, they went open today on the 10th.
Yeah, so maybe there's more people now.
I've not had a chance to jump in today myself, so
yes.
Maybe.
So I say what I say with a grain of salt, knowing that there could be even more people at this point. But for what I have seen, this does not seem like a game that takes advantage of the MMO aspects that I would expect from any MMO. You enter your own area You have a house that you build, you get resources, and all of this is done in your own kind of self-contained instance. Once you step out of the gates of your area, then you enter this bigger hub world where you start to see some people, shops, different areas, engage with quests, go to different sections of the map. I know there are at least 2 portions of a map that are its own instance, but that seems to be the only way you can engage with other players, and everybody's just kind of doing their own thing, gathering resources, going to their shop, going back to their own instance of their home. So from what I have seen, one of the things I was looking forward to with this being an MMO is being able to engage with other people like you can do in Animal Crossing, like Animal Crossing encourages. This game doesn't seem to encourage interaction between other people who are in the hub world. You're just kind of going and doing things. You can trade with other people, fine, but you can do that without actually like seeing the other person's avatar. You could just be like, "Hey, anybody need a thing?" and just kind of put it out there in the ether, and people can claim it, and you can do the same thing. So the limited ways that you can interact is really disappointing. As far as how it feels, though, in terms of this kind of game, this Animal Crossing Stardew Valley-ish thing, it's functional. It's good. It's fine. I really like how they have this kind of quest line that takes you away from the daily grind of gathering resources and building a house and doing all that kind of stuff and farming and whatnot. You can visit temples and kind of explore the world of Palia, kind of get to know it a little bit and discover secrets and visit temples and solve puzzles and things like that. I really like that they did include that. I don't know how far it goes because I haven't like finished several quest lines. When it comes to that, basically there's this little scientist who is trying to figure out like, why are the humans here? Because the premise of this, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but the premise of this is Palia is a world that used to be inhabited by humans and is now inhabited by these other creatures. And now humans are kind of returning, and this particular scientist is just kind of trying to figure out what this world was before the humans left for whatever reason. And I guess we're also discovering like what this world was when we were here at some point. So there's little hints and nods to the idea of like humans used to live here. One of the earliest examples is there is language written in human language, which God knows what that means, because I mean there's hundreds of human languages. So, but I understand what they're going for when they say that. But only humans can understand it. So you are kind of helping uncover the mysteries of what this world was for this scientist as well. I think that's a really interesting thing to do because it does broaden out outside of just your typical stuff. I'm not sure if these lifestyle games do that or have done it. They probably have. I'm just not familiar. But I know as an Animal Crossing fan, like that's not there. And so, you know, if you get bored of collecting and resourcing and doing all that, there's really nothing else to do except go to somebody else's island and engage with their stuff. Fun. But this adding a little extra layer of discovery, I think is a really good idea. After that, Palia just feels like everything else. It's just in an MMO form, but not really that MMO-ish at this point, at least. It's still not done. So my comments are still a bit measured. I want to be clear, it is not done. But as of right now, it is hardly an MMO.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience as well. My wife and I like to build together. So I said, okay, well, the first thing I want to do is set out and build a homestead that we can both go together and build. And the mechanics for that are definitely not well baked at this point. You go into your homestead and you can build a house, and like you said, it's resource gathering. So we're both going out, we're chopping down trees, and we're picking, stuff for food. I do like that the food actually has a mechanic where, if you eat, you earn more experience. You can see that up here in the corner with the pink. The more you eat, the more kind of rested you are, and you're going to gain more XP as you work. So we're busting down trees, and we're breaking rocks and stuff like that, and bringing it all back. And then we ran smack into a mechanic that absolutely turned me way off. Congratulations, you've gathered enough to so we gathered enough to get a thing to refine our wood into planks and smelt our rocks into bricks. Congratulations, you can build a house. Here's an 8-hour timer. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing at all on the screen for 8 hours except for this timer. And I immediately looked at my phone and said, I feel like I'm playing a phone game. I absolutely hate that mechanic, that kind of timer mechanic. Let me build the house. Let me influence it in some way. If you're not going to let me actually bang on the thing and make it faster, then let me throw more resources at it or hire hirelings or do something to affect that number to make it go faster. Because then once I have my house built, I'll happily go out and mine and refine and whatever to build more furniture and build out this place where my wife and I will live while we're playing this game. But all of that is very much gated behind what feels like an MMO, I should say, like a Chinese MMO type model where it's like, you've had enough fun for today. Either go away for 8 hours or pay us more money. I didn't see a pay more money thing. Everything seems to be cosmetic right now. But that the feeling that I could go and play this with my wife does not feel very fleshed out. It feels like I'm going to end up building a house and she's going to end up building a house separately. And those two instances are never going to feel like they're well connected. We also ran into a number of bugs where our progress in building that house, you work really hard to go get all these materials. It would all of a sudden revert. So that was a bug during beta. I'm hoping that that's now killed off. But we also ran into a bug where she would open up her resource box, which is supposed to be my resource box because we're in my instance, and it was her stuff. So her stuff, yeah. So we ran into a number of different bugs that honestly they should have caught before this launched, into beta. I certainly hope that stuff's fixed before open beta because that's going to leave a really bad taste in people's mouths. What you're showing right now is the farming mechanic. You can see right now you're kind of tilling the land. It's a little weird. You kind of hold the mouse and move and kind of scratch out each little block before you can plant seeds. So I don't know. I think they were aiming for more of a connection to the land as you do that. It just doesn't feel like it connects really well with the mechanic of planting and watering and everything else. It feels kind of weird. I don't know. Did you do any farming or anything at all, Anthony?
I mean, this is my gameplay, so yes, I was doing it.
Did you do the thing that I see you doing?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, it felt more complex than it needed to be.
Right, that's exactly right.
Just like, okay, I'm tilling the land. Why can't it just be ready to go and I could plant the thing? I don't mind the waiting. I get that. That's just part of the thing. But when you bring up the timer stuff, so to be clear, to make a wood plank, it takes 1 minute per plank, and you need 100 for the house.
Yep.
For bricks, it takes 2 minutes per brick, and you need 100 bricks.
No, 35 bricks. 35 bricks.
Sorry, 35 bricks.
So you're telling me you need over quite a few hours. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, like 9.5, 10 hours.
And that's the thing. You could go and do other things. You could go do other quests. You can do all that, but it's not going to last the amount of time that it's going to take for all these things to be done. So,
yeah, you're encouraging me to log out, and that's really not. Is that really the objective of the game? Do you really want me to log out? So
it's
it seems kind of backwards.
Thing. I feel like this feels like something that was 2012 or something. Like it just feels like such an old mechanic that has been resurrected for reasons that I don't understand because there is no way to pay to make it go faster. So it's not some monetization trick. So I don't know what it's really there for, at least to the extent that it is there. Food, for example, takes 15 seconds to cook food. I don't know why these...
You're sitting there doing nothing while that happens.
Yeah, but I can understand the idea you have to wait for the thing. That's fine. But the excessiveness for the house, that is weird. 20 seconds to build a plank? 30 seconds for a brick? Like, fine, if you want to add a little waiting mechanic, I can go do other things. I know how to occupy my own time, but 2 minutes is bonkers. And again, there's just not enough social interaction to justify this. There's no events that happen. So, in most MMOs at this point, there's things that happen in this world. This is the hub world we're looking at right now. There's things happening in the world where people can come together and do a thing together. There is none of that. Yes, you can hunt, you can catch bugs, you can look for more resources, all that stuff, but there's nothing where everybody can come together and enjoy something together. There's no dancing, no parties, nothing. It's just go hunt, go shoot a rabbit and bring it back for yourself and do other things on your own.
A lot of the quests felt like fetch quests too. Go meet this person, bring something back to this other person, repeat that repeatedly, and pretty much ad infinitum. It's like there are other types of quests we could be doing, and there's just either we're just testing the servers and that could be just the point of the beta and we're not seeing the real product, or this is the real product and they just don't have a lot of variety.
Have you ever wanted to go back to early 2000, let's say in the 2010s, and just be back in that wonderful time when things like Darksiders was coming out? Because that's how I felt with Atlas Fallen. Because it fills that AA THQ niche, that hole that we all have inside of us, and it fills it perfectly. Some people just expect like AAA, like this year has been godlike when it comes to like phenomenal video games coming out. It is completely fine for a game to come out and just be great at what it does. Like, it is staying in its lane, because you know what? If you stick yourself in the lane of Baldur's Gate and Tears of the Kingdom and stuff, people aren't going to notice you. This one, it's just a good, fun time, I guess. Is a great way of putting it.
I just realized you're playing co-op.
Yep, that's Ron just climbing things randomly. So it goes through this absolutely awful story of just telling you about the land. It gets better as you go along. It does. The second half is much better, but like at the beginning of all this, I have no idea what's going on, and then a glove starts talking to me, a gauntlet, and I am just. Let me be honest. I don't know why this trend started. I don't know if just everyone got together a couple years ago and we're like, you know what? People want talking clothing. Like, because we had Forspoken came out this year. Atomic Heart had your glove talking to you, and now this gauntlet. So it's like, that's 3 games in 1 year.
David, don't you know in video games, something has to talk to you. Enough with the Navi life.
Yeah.
We need clothing.
But mainly clothing that has a voice. It's one of those things that everything gets explained. I enjoy some of the ideas that they present by the end, but the problem you run into story-wise is most of the characters are cardboard cutouts, and you really just don't care what they have to say on something, and they don't really act like they care until you get to the second half, where there's a couple of moments. That being said, though, getting there is awesome. I love the platforming that is in this game, as you can see with a lot of the different things. Like, sand surfing is a lot of fun. There's a couple moments where you accidentally end up like catching on a ledge or walking on rock, and there's just enough sand so you start surfing, then stop, and then you run, and then you stop, and you start surfing again and stuff. And so there's a couple mix-ups with it, but it's a lot of fun. The jumping around and platforming is actually really, really good. You get a double jump very early, and then you actually end up getting a triple air dash, which is just it's one of those good air dashes too. Like you never feel like they're giving you like a bare minimum air dash. You get like you can go really far, and it gives you this feeling of what the gauntlet is kind of giving you is this ultimate power to do all this different stuff. So you end up going around this world, and your whole thing is that you got to save everybody because, you know, you're an unnamed hero that has, you know, that pretty much the premise of almost every video game out there. You got to save everybody, and you actually have a lot of fun doing it. The combat is, I played it on easy just because I was trying to focus on certain mechanics and whatnot. But even on easy, there's a lot of these battles that you can't just go running headfirst into. You are, as much power as you have, you're not overpowered. And that's just part of the game design and encouraging you to use your blocks, use your dodge, use these different mechanics that they built into it. And the two mechanics that are probably the coolest are the momentum system and then the essence stones. Starting with the essence stone, those are your abilities. The easiest way to refer to them would be they're kind of similar to like a Diablo cooldown ability, in the sense that like some things are going to be passive, where it's like, hey, you get a boost in defense, you get a boost in strength. Some things are going to be actual attacks. Like one of them was I can throw my hammer, or throw a hammer, and it'll hit the person for a good damage hit. As well as one was to throw it to cause a tornado to come out and start AoE damaging the people for a second. Those work.
There's like 100 of those, by the way.
Yeah, there's a ton,
and you can
there's also
fuse them together.
I was about to say you know more about the fusions than I do, Ron.
Yeah, so I was playing on normal, and I tried it on hard as well. Don't get the idea that this is like a Souls-like. It's really not. But if you're not paying attention, even easy critters can kill you. So you got to really stay on it and pay attention. But you get these different powers, and you can, as you're running around the world, you'll find mats you can collect. And if you find the right mats, you can fuse your powers together. So, you know, that might be something as simple as critical hits, or it might transform the thing entirely where, you know, the tornado that you throw out might also have an attract power, so it pulls enemies in, or it might do additional damage that's lightning or whatever. But you can kind of mix and match for however you like to play. And David mentioned the hammer. You don't have to use the hammer at all. You can switch it to a whip. You can use a sword. You get two of them. You kind of mix and match. And throughout the game, you'll kind of fall into a rhythm. But the game really encourages you, you know, hey, I see that you're using this power. What if you had this other power, then you fused it together? Now your game is completely different. So it really does encourage you to play differently. Even when you're in your comfort zone, it's kind of challenging you to change it up.
Yep. And the second part is that momentum gauge that we were talking about. So when you're in a battle, there's a little gauge down below, a little meter that actually starts to build as you land attacks. And the reason that it is there is your attacks, as you keep fighting, start getting, they actually represent it by your weapons actually getting larger, but you actually start hitting harder. Like your attacks are doing more damage. That not only does more damage, but it also unlocks your abilities are actually along this gauge. So the higher up you build the gauge, the more of these abilities you can use. Now, the issue you run into with these is obviously you take a hit, your gauge, there's a chance that it's going to drop. But the thing that actually can really start to make a difference is you also start to take more damage, the more damage that you are able to give out. So this is actually put together in the sense of, obviously you take a couple hits, my gauge starts to go down, but you can also choose to dispel all of your momentum gauge in what's called a shatter. And it's essentially a big hit on the enemy, kind of an ultimate, so to speak, move. That one is one that does not change. You don't have a different kind of thing, but it's pretty much you just smash down all of your gauge on top of them. And you get into these moments in these battles, and you have to make the decision of, if you're fighting a bigger enemy, do I do I use this gauge because I'm low on health? Because that's another thing that also builds up is your health dispersal, like your health potion, so to speak, refills as you attack. So it's kind of one of those things of, I'm low on health. I've used all my health potions. I could be taken out with one hit, but I don't really want to give up my momentum gauge, but it might be better to hit this big slam on it just to get myself to where I can weather a couple more hits, do a couple more attacks, build up my health potions again so I can use them. So it's this game of
here's that shatter,
trying to figure that out. Yeah. And it does show you actually do get a kind of a cloud around the enemy's health bar when you've built up your shatter, and your shatter can actually take out the enemy. So that's kind of a cool thing too, is you can kind of look at it as hey, it's worth my time to go ahead and use this shatter.
There's also a secondary mechanic around enemies, larger enemies. So this enemy only has one health bar, but there are a bunch of enemies that roam around the world that have multiple health bars. So there's a crab, for instance, and it has a health bar for each claw. It has a health bar for the body. It has a health bar for the head. And so you got to take out each individual part. And you'll see in the early game, it doesn't matter. You're just trying to survive these things because they're extraordinarily tough. But after you build up some power and you start to get into the rhythm of the game, you'll notice that one part has a gold bar to it. If you take out that part, it spawns additional materials, or you might get something unique out of it. So you can start to farm enemies, and you can start to kind of understand the mechanics of that risk reward that David was talking about. If I build so much momentum that I get killed instantly, maybe not so good. But if I build so much momentum that I can kill them instantly or break off a claw, then I'm farming equipment quickly. So that constant push and pull risk reward is really a fun part. Like David said, the story's not, the story's kind of throwaway, but it does work in at least keeping you engaged between battles. There's another element that I wanted to point out, that this game, while we're playing it co-op on the screen, there's absolutely no impetus to do so. It's not a game that was designed to be co-op and they say, oh, you can totally play it single player, which is always a lie. This is definitely a single player game that can also be played multiplayer.
Yep. Yeah, it works actually tremendously.
Yeah.
Like, I did not expect it to be as, especially we're playing before launch, and it was perfect. Had no issues with, Ron and I have done our fair share of playing things co-op and it not working. So it was really nice to mess around with this and be just instantly everything's working. And then you said that there was, with the co-op, scale down, because I'm playing it. We're playing this section as the beginning of the game for me, but Ron was way far ahead of me.
I have way cooler armor. So I was about 3/4 of the way through the game at this point. So I had really high stats, but David was in the very beginning. That's why when you see his attack bar, he only has one item mapped. So I get to keep all of my powers, but they're all scaled back really far. So my attack power is like, 70 something, and now it's 3. So I don't do a ton of damage, but I still have all my powers. So I don't feel like I've lost all my power. I just don't do as much damage. And it's flashy and fun for me. David gets something to aspire to when he grows up, and and it still ends up being fun.
And you can run around.
Damage scaling. Sorry, the damage scaling for you, Ron. Though, if you were to go back to your original level, it would feel the same in terms of how long it takes to beat enemies. Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. Because it doesn't feel like you're suddenly like damage sponge situation. It feels like it scales properly. It's a little like Diablo 4 in that way, where it doesn't feel like, just because you're in a party with somebody that's 3 times your level, that person doesn't feel like they're slogging to play the game. It's really well done.
And the loot is dispersed between you two, so you do get to bring loot back with you on the co-op side.
So progression is kept.
Yep, it's
there's a lot of this too.
Good.
So there is the main thread, but there's a ton of little side things that you can do that are unnecessary to the main story. Like that little elk that you saw. You can skip this entirely if you wanted, but it's a quiet moment. If you follow those elks around and you don't attack them, eventually they'll go to their little secret spot and they'll reveal some loot that you can pick up. And those are kind of dotted throughout the world. So you have these quiet pause moments where you're not flying around like crazy on the sand. Take a beat. Watch the nature.
Yep.
be rewarded for it. Same thing with that. You see on the screen that large thread. There's something interesting there. But over to the left in that little grove, there's probably a hidden box, or there's some little side quest or something that you haven't discovered. That's just kind of off the beaten path. So if you're a completionist, there's a ton of stuff to do. And if you're not, you just want to do the main story, well, have at you. You're not gonna feel like you lost anything by doing that.
So I went to an event in San Francisco a couple of weeks back. You guys know I talked about Granblue Fantasy Versus. It was my first time playing it. Got it on Steam for $1.98. And I'm very pleased with my purchase. I decided to buy it since I was going to this event. I wanted to understand, what is Granblue Fantasy? Heard of it? So got a taste of it. Rising, which is the next iteration of Versus, this is a fighting game, by the way, is basically Cygames' version of, okay, how do we just make this better, more refined? The criticisms that I had about Versus were lots of fluff. There's just so many things in this that don't add, or they don't necessarily take away. They just don't need to be there. So in Versus Rising, they've taken some of that stuff out. So one of my biggest pet peeves was the grid system. I'm not even going to go into what that thing is. It was unnecessary in Versus. It didn't add to the story mode at all, but it's gone in Versus Rising. They specifically said they want us to focus on the story and the fighting. So kudos to them. They got that memo. So very pleased about that. So it's still going to be story based. There's going to be, from what it sounded like, this part was a little confusing when I was talking to them. It sounds like the first act is going to be the same as what was in Versus, but then there's going to be differences when you get into later chapters in Versus Rising. So that may be off a little bit. Point is, you will still be able to play a story mode, get used to the mechanics, and, just kind of enjoy the characters if that is your bag. The nice thing, though, one of the major, cuts that they've done is if you are a person who does command inputs, meaning quarter circle forward, those specific things, you no longer get advantages for doing that. In Versus, you did more damage, faster cooldowns if you did command inputs versus the simple inputs. In this, gone. That's not going to be a thing anymore. Simple inputs, command inputs, you could do both, either one. Options, great. Use whatever you're more comfortable with. A lot of people don't like that because, they want to be rewarded for the skillful thing that they do, but that's not what Cygames and Arc Systems is going for. They want this to be an approachable fighting game. I don't want to use the word accessible because it's not as accessible as something like Street Fighter 6, but it is very much approachable. And part of that is they don't want people who use simple commands to feel alienated from those who have mastered or are just used to using the standard commands that Street Fighter 6 players and all that are so used to using. So everybody's on an even playing field, and at the end of the day, what they want us to focus on is the neutral game, all the stuff, the mind, the mental stuff, the chess game that happens during a fight, instead of fiddling with getting commands right and getting the advantages from those. So what I love, though, is, besides that, is the fact that they have deepened the actual fighting. One of my biggest problems with Versus was I didn't feel it was deep enough. So I was incorrect in the idea that there were no overheads to stop crouch guarding, which I felt was really strong. Still kind of is, but there are overheads. The problem is that there's not really too many reasons to use them because There's long range attack, mid range attacks, and the moments you get in close to somebody, people have kind of already figured out like how to get around all that stuff. So in order to make things a little bit more interesting during the fight, they have now added guard crushes. So basically you go up against somebody who likes to block and is very good at blocking everything. You can spend a, not spend. Yes, actually, sorry, I'm getting things confused, but you can spend some of your gauge to guard crush somebody, break their guard, and take away what is called a bravery point. You get 3 of these points, and if you happen to guard crush somebody 3 times, then you'll stun them long enough to be able to pull off a pretty sweet combo. So this guard crush is limited by the fact that if you use up all your gauge, you can't do it. So you have to balance how much gauge you use, which you need that for your supers too. So they're giving people more options and ways to strategize how they're going to spend their gauge. When do they guard crush? When do they use their stronger special attacks, which also use gauge? So there's just more options that make the chess match a little bit more interesting, rather than I'm just going to guard and wait till the person drops their combo or wait till they're done with it. And then it just becomes a match of, I wait for the whiff punish, or I'll wait for them to make a mistake, which is what Versus felt like. Now it feels like it is definitely, no, I have to think a little bit. I have to strategize. I have to be tactful. I can't just wait for the whiff punish. I could actually go in and be a little bit more offensive. Meanwhile, I'm also knowing that they can also be a little bit more offensive. So there's a lot more thinking that's going on, which I appreciate. And that's why I think using command inputs or simple inputs really doesn't matter at the end of the day, because what happens in that chess match, that mental game between 2 people, that's where it gets really interesting. So they've also added a counter system called Roaring Strikes. Basically, you spend a bravery point to counter, let's say somebody's pulling off a really good combo and you want this thing to end. You can pull off a command, counter it, stop it, and it spends one of your bravery points. So that leaves you with 2, and you can also counter the guard crush with that as well. You don't lose the bravery point if they guard crush you, if you do successfully counter it. So that's kind of the balance that they have there. So again, another way to make the chess match a little bit more interesting compared to what they were doing before. So they're doing some really interesting things to simplify it, but still have it deep enough to where it is not only fun to play, but I think it's actually going to be more fun to watch as well. I think Evo didn't represent it well enough because there weren't enough people who truly understood all the mechanics. So I think next year when it's at Evo, it's going to be even more fun to watch, because people will have mastered all these, roaring strikes and counters and guard crushes and meter and gauge spending and things like that. So I think it's in a really good place. One thing they have added that I think is going to be fascinating is called Granblue Legends. And this is basically a separate mode within Versus Rising that's more arcadey and chill. Basically, there are games that you can play that are just for the fun of it. There's 3 games. They're kind of based on the ideas of like Fall Guys games and like Mario Party mini games. So they're just little mini games you can have and compete with other people. It's not meant to be competitive or anything like that, but it's just a chill time if you want to get away from, the competitive aspect or take a break from the story, whatever the case may be, and just have a good time. They fully expect people to actually just engage with that part of the game and not even mess with like the story or the PvP aspect of it. So it'll start with 3 mini games, and then later they'll expand more into it. I don't know if it will be paid or not, but they have plans for that because, again, they do want people to engage with the Granblue universe and, not have to be beholden to the idea of like, oh, I like this game, but I don't really like the PvP aspect or the more competitive aspects of it. So they're really trying to build out a casual space for the casuals while also inviting them to engage with some of the deeper aspects of the fighting game. I think it's in a great place. I think it's going to be pretty good. It's coming out November 30th. So I like what I see with it. I'm glad they're taking out stuff that doesn't need to be there and focusing on the stuff that matters. So yeah, that's Granblue Fantasy Versus. Noah, you should check it out. Is all anime.
It's looking good. I like what I'm hearing so far.
Do you think that
it actually got me back, and I started playing just Versus more because I was like, yeah, no, this is I'm ready. Like this is much better.
Do you think they went with the simplified controls based off of what Mortal Kombat's doing? Do you think that maybe that's kind of in response to, like, Mortal Kombat has a simplified system. You can do all the crazy button combinations to pull off some of the crazy moves, or you can map it to like 2 button presses and have it execute the same move, which obviously they probably don't want that in competition. But do you think maybe that's in response to what MK is doing?
I don't think it's in response. I think it's just the reality that this is the best way to get people who have some tacit interest in fighting games, or at least Psy Games case, Granblue. This is the best way to get people involved in it. Street Fighter 6 did the same thing. I think Street Fighter 6 did it the best way with their modern controls, because it's still pretty viable. Somebody made it to the top 6 in Evo using modern controls with Chun-Li. So the idea that we just want people to play fighting games and not have to worry about fumbling controls and more focus on the fun of the fighting, because that is what is the fun part. Trust me, as I am not good at command inputs, but I fully understand why it is so satisfying to use them. But I also get it from the other perspective, where if you're not good at doing that, or maybe you physically cannot do it, you are limited from playing something that you are interested in. So here is something where it is more about what happens in the fighting, more so than, oh man, I can't pull off this move that I want to do. So that is Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising. All right. Yeah. Well, the wheel is empty. So that will do it for us tonight. Yeah.
Thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate you watching. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye now.
Peace.